Welcome, everyone, to the Bamboo Lab podcast. I'm your host, Brian Bosley, and for the better part of the past quarter century, I've had the distinct pleasure of working along some of the most amazing human beings on the planet, those peak performers in the world. And what we're doing here is we do every day or every week, we bring those ideas and strategies directly to you, to your home, to your car, to your office, and to your headset. You ever feel like you're underachieving a little bit in life, that you have so much more to give? Do you feel like you're that hamster stuck on the wheel and you're spinning but not going in the direction you choose? Well, if so, you've landed in the right spot. The Bamboo Lab podcast was written, created, and broadcast strictly for you, all you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you want to learn more about what we do here at the Bamboo Lab, feel free to give me a call or a text or an email. My number is 616-366-2789. And my direct email is Brian, and that's Brian with an I, at bamboolab3, and that's the number 3.com. Brian at bamboolab3.com. Well, a little bit of an update. I want to read off a nice letter email that we received 2 weeks ago, and it was regarding the Bill Williams podcast, when Bill Williams was our honored guest. And it came from a lady named Kelly, and she emailed both Bill and I together. And she said, "Good morning, gentlemen. We have never met Bill face-to-face, but I've seen you in person in the women's conference in Nashville and thought you were an impressive speaker and person. With that said, after hearing your podcast with Brian, my respect for you has increased exponentially. Leaders can say many things when on stage, but the fact that you walk the walk and carry the message in all areas, your influence is powerful. Thank you for sharing all that you did. It was great to listen to and learn and grow from you." That's powerful stuff. That is just amazing stuff. All right, let's dissect. I read a quote recently that reminded me of our special honored guest today. And it's a quote that probably many of you heard. And it was a student asked his master one day, "You teach me fighting, but you talk about peace. How do you reconcile the two?" And the master looked at the student and said, "It is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war." Well, my friends, we have a warrior with us today. Coach Fred Schuldt, out of New Jersey, husband to his amazing wife, Lisa, and father to Sydney and Andrew. His bio is extensive, just like many of our guests. Financial advisor with Ameriprise Financial. But more than that, he's what we define here at the Bamboo Lab as a striver, thriver, and survivor. He's an accomplished author, speaker, and coach. And I'm going to let his story speak for itself, because this man has gone through war and come back. And he is a warrior, and then he's a warrior as he's planting and living in a peaceful garden. So my friend, my brother, Coach Fred, welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast.
Wow. Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I know the other guests that you've had, and I know how much you care about your audience, and that you would have me here today is really an honor. And the words you just said, I'm a little shocked and humbled right now. So thank you very much.
Well, if there's one thing I know about you, Fred, is that you are definitely a humble man. So for the Bamboo Pack, Coach Fred and I have never met in face-to-face, but we have talked several times on the phone. And we have both helped each other go through some very challenging times in our lives. We've inspired each other. We've challenged each other. We've really stood by each other from, 1,000 miles away, him in New Jersey and me in the upper parts of the state of Michigan. And we do call each other brother, just like many of my other guests. And we do say, "I love you," which is an honor when a man of Fred's status and character says, "I love you, brother." That means the world to me. So we're going to introduce you to the world today, Fred. And I want to ask, can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your childhood, and who is Fred Schuldt?
Well, I'm just a regular guy from New Jersey who wound up going on a somewhat incredible journey. But normal childhood, I was raised by incredible parents, Ann and Fred, and I have a brother, and I had an incredible grandmother in my life, and an incredible aunt and cousins, and we were all really close. And I grew up in what I thought was a small town in New Jersey. We're a suburb of New York City, so I thought we were a small town having 25 or 30,000 people. But, compared to the rest of the country, it's actually a fairly populated place. And so I thought I was growing up in a small town in New Jersey. And it was a primarily Irish Catholic neighborhood that I lived in. I had a paper route, and everybody in the whole paper route was Irish Catholic. And so I was also somewhat sheltered. And but then I went off to college in Massachusetts to a liberal arts school, Springfield College, and I was exposed to the bigger world.
I love that. So growing up, it sounds like you had a pretty large family, aunts and uncles, grandmas and grandpas, mom and dad, and you were a paper boy. I love to hear when successful people go back to their first job. Did you ever think when you were slinging papers off your bike or walking that you'd be on a podcast and have written an amazing book and motivating people and helping people with their finances?
No.
Well, growing up, Fred, how many people, who was the biggest inspiration for you? What really started to forge the man you are today?
Wow. I mean, there are a lot of people. But I think two come to mind off the top of my head. So, brother, I'm going to give you a choice. I can either tell you a little bit about my dad, who grew up without a dad and went on to be an awesome father. And I can tell you about my grandmother.
Please do.
Who had all kinds of challenges to overcome. I think the two of them really, really set the tone for my life.
Do you think the fact that both of them had overcome such great challenges really forged them to be the people they are and to be such a great role model to you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, my dad never knew his own father. Met him twice when he came to the house to beg money from his mom. And my dad grew up in New York City, very poor and rough situation. And went away to the Army to make something of himself. And when he got out of the Army, his mom had sold her 2-bedroom apartment and given away all of his stuff. So he literally came out of the Army with nothing but the clothes on his back. Thankfully, he met my wife. I mean, he met his wife, my mom, and her mother, my grandmother, this incredible woman. And they made a life, and they raised 2 kids, and they sent them both to college and made an incredible life for us and their grandchildren and everybody around them. He was the first coach, Fred. He found time to coach the baseball teams and things like that. And with all of that going on, the thing I always remembered about my dad when I was little was that everybody loved him. Everybody loved my dad. And, that really inspired me. And then there's my grandmother. When she was born, she had polio, and her aunt would pull her around in a little red wagon, and she overcame polio and went on to get married and have 3 children. Then in her early 50s, her husband died of cancer. And she went on to become in the 60s an executive at the Pioneers, Bell Atlantic here in New Jersey, at AT&T. She was the first woman executive that they had. And she lived an incredible life of giving to others in the church and, helping the homeless. And she had a program set up to do hearing tests for people in the poor districts of Newark, New Jersey. And she just had this incredible life after all of that. And she, had financial independence till the day she died, because every time she got paid, she saved a little bit of money. Wow. It's just amazing. So, she set the tone for my life. That you work hard, that you play hard, that you love unconditionally, and you give back to others what you can give back to others.
Wow. Okay. Well, just bear with me because I'm writing down. Wonderful. I mean, what you just said about your grandmother and your father almost sound like a couple of made-for-TV movies. Really, overcoming the odds that they did, both of them. Your grandma being an executive in the 60s having been a polio survivor, your father growing up without a father, then coming home from the Army with nothing but the clothes on his back. I mean, wow.
My grandmother did something else too. Her oldest daughter, my Aunt Joan, in the 60s, so it was either in the late 50s or the early 60s, my Aunt Joan had a Down syndrome baby. And they told her at the hospital that she wouldn't live past 2 years and that she should just be institutionalized. And my grandmother said, no, that's not going to happen. And while she was working, she cared for her Down syndrome baby granddaughter overnight so that my aunt could sleep and take care of her all day because she needed 24-hour day care to survive. And my cousin Eileen lived into her 50s.
Wow. I can see where your warrior blood came from, without a doubt. Now, for the listeners out there, for you listener, I want to recommend, before we get started, because I really want him to talk about this, Coach Fred wrote a book just a couple of years ago called Keep Showing Up. It's a seeker's guide to thrive. And it really outlines in there his life journey it's riddled with lessons and wisdom that if you're going through anything in life, which we all are, we're all struggling, we're all hurting in some way, shape, or form, we're all fighting pain. This book is an inspiration. I read it as soon as it came out. I ordered it and read it. I ordered a copy for my sister. You know, Coach Fred went through 3 surgeries in 3 years, survived cancer twice, and a plethora of other obstacles that I hope he can get into a bit today to share with you so that you can connect well and understand that regardless of what we're going through in life, there's hope. There are men like Coach Fred out there who can inspire us and guide us through the journeys and through the struggles as we try to scale or crash through those brick walls. So I know, Coach Fred, that you've been through a lot in your life, and I know the last couple of years have been rather challenging for you, but can you share before you go into your story, what has been the greatest learning for you over these past couple of years?
Oh, the thing that I've learned is that there's a big difference between dealing with the struggles in our life and healing from the traumatic events in our life. There's a big difference between dealing and healing. And so much of my book that did come out 3 years ago is about what I learned about dealing with adversity. But there's a whole other layer of healing from trauma that I've been learning about over the last year and a half. And I think, if I hadn't written the book, it would be in there. That there's a time in our life, there's a season for dealing and using the tools, cognitive therapy or coaching, life coaching, things like that. There's a time for that and a season for that in our life where we need to figure out how to just deal with what we were just handed. But there's also a season and a time that we should be looking to heal those things that have really hurt us and be able to recognize that there's things that we can just deal better with. And there are things that we have to take the time to try to find a way to heal from.
That's powerful. I've never heard it put that way. There's a difference between dealing and healing. And I think so often we don't talk about the healing. We ask people, how are you, they suffer a loss in their family, or they suffer a financial crisis or some type of any obstacle in life. We tend to ask people, how are you dealing with it? Or how is he dealing or she dealing with it? We never do ask, how are you healing through it? How are you growing through this? And how are you? That's a powerful way to look at that. So audience, please get on Amazon or go to or whatever platform you purchase your books from and buy the book from Fred Schuldt. Keep Showing Up. I've ordered one. I have it in my library. My sister had it. She loved it as well. And it's a 5-star rating across the board on Amazon. So please, please, please get on and check it out. It's going to be the best $10 you spend. All right, I'm going to ask the proverbial question, the hard question now, Coach. If you could gather up all that courage and warrior mentality you have in there, and can you share with us what is the most difficult thing you've gone through? in your life?
Oh, brother. This is something I've never shared publicly before in all of my motivational speaking and writing, because it's the most recent thing that's happened on my journey. And I was amazed that with everything I went through, that there was something I could go through that would be worse. My first surgery, my intestines ruptured. The hospital sent me home. I went into septic shock, stopped breathing 3 times after a 14-hour surgery that couldn't be completed. And I had an 18-month-old baby at home, and my wife was 6 months pregnant with my son. And I almost didn't get to do all that. I had a series of complications that led to several more surgeries over several years. I then, at age 39, got diagnosed with prostate cancer and had to have my 4th major surgery in 10 years. I hit rock bottom after that and went on a journey to find Freddie, the confident, happy guy I was before it all happened. And I found that he was gone, and there was somebody else now. And he liked being called Coach Fred because he loved coaching youth athletics and soccer in town with little boys and girls. And he's a cancer survivor and a financial advisor and all these things. And I suddenly became a motivational speaker without even trying. I made a little video. It went to the president of the largest financial planning company. And the next thing you know, I'm spending 3 years crisscrossing the country, speaking to tens of thousands of people. And eventually I write a book to try to share what I learned about getting up again with others. And I thought I was a warrior. I was strong. I was, could deal with anything. And then at the height of COVID in September of 2020, my wife and I had a devastating house fire. And on a Saturday night, 3 weeks after both my kids had left for college, I watched their home burn and all their stuff. And I was in the house trying to keep the fire out of the garage from going into the basement. And it was a 1,000-degree fire in the garage. There were flammables. I'm an outdoorsman. There's a bunch of stuff in there that could burn. And eventually things started blowing up, and I ran up the stairs out of the house as the 1,000-degree fire burst out of my basement, and that burst out of my garage and into my basement. And I just missed it again, Brian. And it was a crazy time, right? There's firemen there. The fire's not even out yet, and I start getting investigated for arson. They think I did this. And that was a crazy night, and I didn't sleep, and it was emotional and traumatic. But I thought I was okay. I talked to my best friend a couple of days later. I was like, I have this strangely centered place. I know I'm emotional, but I feel centered. And I thought that this was going to be no big deal because, hey, folks, I didn't die. This isn't terrible. It's a bunch of stuff. My children still have their parents. This is just stuff that can be replaced. I'm a financial advisor. We're insured. It's going to be okay. This is not cancer. And but something happened, Brian, and I'll never know really what it was. But it was either the adrenaline and the endorphins from the fight or flight that led to the chemicals in my brain changing. And then I went manic. I was in a manic episode suddenly, and I was out doing things out of control. Out of love, I was out loving strangers and giving away money and trying to fix the world's problems. But I had gone into a manic episode, and it led to my poor wife, Lisa, having to make the brave decision to have me taken in for psychiatric help. And when I got brought into the hospital, they locked me in a room in the hospital room. And I had some sort of PTSD reaction. And I lost it. All of the trauma throughout all of my life came boiling to the top. I was yelling and screaming and cursing and showing my scars and begging them to get me out of here. I have PTSD. You can't do this to me. You have to take me out of here. They left me in there for hours as I literally lost my mind. And then 4 big men came in the room and held me down on the table and they gave me some shots and knocked me out. The next thing I know, I'm in a wheelchair. I'm having to get undressed and get naked and put some robe on. And I wound up in the psychiatric ward. And it was either the PTSD can also cause a manic episode when someone goes through another traumatic episode. It could have been just the traumatic episode of being in the house with the fire. We don't know. But one way or the other, the chemicals in my brain changed. And, I was in a place that I never thought I could be. And when I kind of came out of the days of the medication and started to realize what had happened, I was shocked. I thought, how could this happen to me? I'm Coach Fred. I'm the survivor. Right. Am I a fraud? Did I write a bunch of stuff that wasn't helpful? And I think that's where I really learned the difference. See, because for those 20 years of going through all those other surgeries and all those other things that happened to me, I just put my head down and moved forward the best I could and tried to deal with it the best way I could and tried to make something good out of it. Geez, if I could just use what I went through to help some other people, which I was able to do, that would be amazing. But what I never did was heal from all that trauma.
Okay.
And what I learned was I was in a place now where I had to heal. And that's what I've been doing the last year and a half. I really just hunkered down and I'm healing for the first time from all of it. And I just want your audience to know that we are fragile and it's okay. It's what makes us human. And we all get knocked down. But where you are today isn't where you're always going to be. And you can get up again.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Get the latest insights from top mortgage pros on Mortgage Connects, a podcast by MGIC. We interview thought leaders from across the industry to share their wide-ranging expertise and candid views on critical market developments and current housing trends. Our guests reveal highly effective marketing and referral strategies, training tips and best practices, and what you can expect from the mortgage market in the future. Hear from experts like best-selling author Todd Duncan, U.S. Bank's Lenny McNeil, and Freddie Mac's Danny Gardner. Listen to Mortgage Connects on your favorite app or at mortgageconnects.com today.
Wow. Well,
I am.
I can say this, I love you. And hearing your story, I know I've heard that story in our phone calls, but witness your bravery and courage and your strong passion and desire to relate and connect and help other people. This moment is one of the greatest honors I've had on this podcast journey over the past 7 months. Thank you so much for opening up to me and to the audience for the first time publicly on the obstacles and challenges that you've gone through and how you're taking those challenges and you're healing from them now. And just knowing your spirit, I know that you're going to come out of this a much stronger and better man than you went into it as. So thank you so much, my friend. Wow.
You're welcome.
Whew. Well, for the audience, please just sit back and reflect for a moment, please. Whether you're driving, walking, or sitting at your desk, connect with what Coach Fred just said, the challenges, these obstacles that seem unfair to happen to one person. And we all seem to feel that way when we're going through something. We tend to ask the proverbial question, why me? Why me? And this is a gentleman who certainly has the right to ask that question. But yet, despite everything, he is grounded and coming back and fighting like the warrior that he is, and he's healing from it. And he's sharing this message to all of you, to thousands of people across the world right now. And I couldn't be more proud. I couldn't be more proud. What's next for you?
Can I just dovetail
Yes.
quickly onto something you just said? The question of why me, I've certainly asked it from time to time, and I think a lot of people ask it. And my take on it is this: you're never going to know, but you can answer it for yourself, right? You can give yourself an answer for why me. My answer that I gave myself was that it's me because somehow I have a unique ability to help other people connect the dots in their own life with what I've gone through. That's why me.
Oh.
Right? And so I don't have to ask that question anymore because I've answered it for myself. If you keep asking, why me? Give yourself an answer that you're okay with.
Wow. That's perfect. I'm still trying to write, so bear with me. That is so powerful. And anyone out there right now who is asking that question, and I know I've asked that question recently in one way, shape, or form. We all do. And I think that's the best advice you can hear is the answer is not out there to the question, why me? It's internal. Ask it for yourself. Just like Ryan Holiday talks about in the book, the obstacle is the way. The obstacle is the way if we are looking for the way. So whatever you're going through, answer it and find out why me and turn that into something powerful. Dig into that, what we call the dark side of you, and use those difficult, challenging, dark times as fuel and ammunition for your soul and spirit to change your life and the life of the people around you and perhaps the entire world. Well, so now, Coach, I don't know if you want to go into this, but you shared something with me one time, and please bear with, and you can decline talking about this, but you went through somewhat of a challenge as a young boy when you were 4 or 5 years old too, didn't you?
Yes, which had a huge impact on this latest thing. I was at 4.5. I was badly burned by an unfortunate accident. I had a neighbor, and our driveways lined up together, and they had a little boy too, and I was allowed to go from my backyard to knock on his door. And his mom, unfortunately, had left a frying pan of boiling hot grease on the steps. And I walked up, knocked on the door, nobody answered. I walked down. As I walked down, my little foot hit the handle of the frying pan, and the boiling pan of hot grease came up and burned my leg from my ankle to the back of my knee. And unfortunately, for the next few weeks, my parents had to hold me down on the table and pour peroxide on me. And it's my first memory in life, and it's really strong and burned in there. And I never really thought that it was anything for me to worry about. It was just something that happened to have when I was a kid. And I have a scar that gets itchy in the winter, but whatever. And I had no idea because I didn't really understand the power of our subconscious. And with the people I've been working with to try to understand what I went through, one of the things I've learned is that having a fire would have been a particularly difficult thing for someone who has a major trauma that young that's related to fire. There was a 4-year-old who showed up after the fire traumatized because he's been burned before. And so, that those young experiences, unfortunately, even though it might not be something that I spent a lot of time ever thinking about, that I was actually traumatized over it. It was just a bad first memory to me, turned out to be something very powerful. Our subconscious is really powerful, and things can happen when we get traumatized. And when we go through a new trauma, our subconscious, like a computer, starts pulling up the other traumatizing events and uses those to figure out how to deal with the new trauma. So when you go through layers of trauma, it all starts to build on top of one another, which is what happened to me, and why I wound up in the psychiatric ward, was because I had too much trauma over too long that I never healed from.
And they just start to stockpile and build on each other and kind of.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Can we ask how right now you are dealing, or how are you are healing, and how do you feel right now?
I feel really good right now. I know myself better now than I ever have, and I've always been someone who kind of had a pretty good understanding of themselves. I did a lot of soul searching over the years with everything that I went through, and I feel really good because I feel like I have an understanding of myself and that I never had before. I also have a new layer of understanding for people who are having mental health struggles in their life, and it isn't always a crisis like I had, but people have mental health, struggles, and I think that I have a new level of compassion that I wouldn't have been able to have before.
That's exactly why I think when of course I read your book prior to the house fire and had known you prior to the house fire, but I think that's why every time when I read your book, and I read it twice, and both times reading it, and then every time we talk, and I think the audience will relate to this, is I just feel better because of hearing your voice. I think when you go through such trauma and you come out of that, as I said, a warrior, and you fight, you fight the negativity of it, and you deal with it for a while, then you begin to heal from it. There's some type of a calm confidence that exudes from you when you speak. And I think obviously that's what that is you've been through the war and you've paid the price of the battle. And now you're coming out of it an accomplished warrior with so much to offer to the world. So again, I'm going to say to the Bamboo Pack audience, please get on Amazon and check out Coach Fred's book, Keep Showing Up. It's just an extension of this conversation with a lot more detail, and you're going to connect so well with his story and his journey and his strength and wisdom. So, Coach, what is next for you?
Next for me, well, I love my role as a financial advisor. I love the retired couples and widows and widowers that I work with, and that's always going to be something I do. I am focused on my wife and I right now. Both of our children are away in college. We are now back in our home after the fire, and I'm going to take some time to just focus on my wife and I and enjoy that. And I'm going to continue to heal. I think I have some more healing to do, and I have some more learning to do. And I think I'll know when the time is right for me to start to go out and to actively look for ways to share my story. And hopefully I can continue to help some people to know that they can get up again.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I know when I started this podcasting platform back in January, I put a short list of people that I definitely want to have on here. And I was so happy when you agreed to come on here. I know you're not actively looking out to share your message at this point. You're not looking for speaking engagements necessarily, actively anyway. You're focusing on your family, your financial planning practice, and your healing and continued learning. So I was very honored when you said, yes, I will share my story with your audience. Is there anything, as we begin to wrap up, Fred, is there anything that you'd like to leave with the audience? Is there some poignant learning or something that you think the world needs to know based on your life experiences and challenges and growth that you've gone through?
Well, I think there's two things. I think the first thing that I would want people to remember is what I previously said, that it's that where you are today is not where you're always going to be. And I look at that as two sides of the same coin, right? If things are going good in your life and it's great, please embrace every single second of it when it's good, because it could change on a dime, right? Where you are today is not where you're always going to be. The other thing I would say is the other side of that coin is for people who are knocked down right now and who are not where they want to be right now. And they need to remember that where they are is not where they're always going to be. And that's where we lose hope. If we stop knowing that, if we start thinking this is it, I'm never going to be the same, that's where we start to lose hope. So have hope. Where you are is not where you're always going to be. You're going to go somewhere else, and you get to decide where you're going. Wow. And the other thing I think is the other thing that really helped me on my journey and certainly led to me being a speaker and writing the book is a quote that I had heard from a good friend of mine who was a priest, and I went to church one day as I lived here and preach. And he had a quote by this gentleman named Howard Thurman. And it said, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do that. Because what the world needs is people who've come alive.
I love it. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. And then go do that.
Wow. I hope.
Because what the world needs is people who've come alive.
I hope the listener out there really caught that, because I do think so often we are trying to find our place in the circle, and we're trying to fit in. We're trying to figure out what we can do to make a difference, whether it's to the world as a whole or to our own inner group of loved ones or at our career job. And really what the world needs is people who are doing what makes them come alive, what makes them get up in the morning with a little extra pep in their step, makes their eyes shine a little brighter, makes their heart beat a little faster. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, my friend. We're going to wrap up, but I'm going to try to recapture a page of notes here on what I've got from my amazing friend. And there's not in any particular order, but I really, really liked what you repeated twice, Fred. And where we are today is not where we're always going to be. So if you out there in the audience are going through a really beautiful time right now, stop, reflect, and smile, because it will change. So embrace it. And also on the antithesis of that, if you are going through a difficult time right now and really feel beaten and downtrodden, realize it's not always going to be this way. But the journey to doing that is not just, to getting out of that is not just dealing with it, but it's finding a way to heal through it, to become stronger because of it. I just think that's so powerful. And when we ask ourselves during those difficult times, why me? You answer that question yourself. Why you? Why were you chosen to go through this difficult time? There's a reason in there. And to find that reason is one of the most powerful things we can do. And I didn't get the whole quote down, but I did learn, I know the gist of what you're saying. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who come alive. And I paraphrase that a great deal, but I would recommend anybody out there to please go look that quote up, print it off, read it every day, because that is extremely powerful. And just thinking about, all the things that have challenged our amazing guest today, and he still talks about, giving back. His grandmother, I think, shared with him, giving back to others what you can give back. And he does that on a consistent basis. So audience out there, as we wrap up, I want to just recommend one thing. Get out there every day and just keep showing up. My friend, thank you for being an honored guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast. This was a pleasure. And if you don't mind, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes with you afterward if you have time.
Of course.
Okay.
I always have time for you, Brian.
Thank you so much. And so everyone out there, please reflect, maybe listen to this podcast a couple of times. When you're going through a difficult time in life and you feel challenged, this is the podcast to go to. Fred Schuldt, Coach Fred, my brother, my friend. Listen to it. In the meantime, everyone out there, please find us on Spotify, find us on iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcasts, Amazon Music. I think we're on 31 platforms now. Rate us, follow us, and please share this podcast with 3 others. Let them take it from there. We want to get the messages out that we're hearing from guests like we have today with Coach Fred. In the meantime, get out there and sculpt your life. Make a difference. God bless you. God bless your family. God bless your friends. And by all means, God bless those amazing dreams you carry in your heart.